Welcome to Working Man Investor. On this channel, I discuss the economic environment and the steps everyday people can take to protect themselves and their families financially. Today's episode is going to be on Triffin's dilemma. Triffin's dilemma is a really powerful lens for looking at the global economy. Why is it important to understand what's happening in the global economy? Because what goes on there is not covered properly by the mainstream media, and it was never taught in our textbooks. These economic laws, economic forces such as Triffin's dilemma, play a huge role in the global economy. That in turn affects us financially. What I want you to get from my channel is an understanding of these multitude of economic forces. I want you to be able to cut through the noise that you hear from the media, from your friends, from your family, and process the information of what is happening and why it's happening. Once you understand what's happening in the economy and in the world, you can start to formulate a financial plan. When you have a financial plan in place, you set goals. When you start working towards and achieving those goals, step by step, your confidence grows. You're going to enjoy financial success and build a better future for your family. I want you to forget everything that you were taught about money. People have told you that if you pursue money, you're greedy, that you make it to enjoy it, you make it to spend it. The way I look at money is it's something to build a financial wall around my family to protect us. The higher I make that wall and the thicker, the more secure my family is. We can survive things like deep recessions. We can survive things like a depression, like a job loss. That's what I want you to get. And the way to get there is to understand economic forces. So let's get into Triffin's dilemma. Triffin's dilemma was discovered by a Belgian economist named Robert Triffin. In 1959, he stood before the Congress at the Joint Economic Committee and informed them the gold standards formed at Bretton Woods was doomed. The reason for this is if the U.S. stopped running budget deficits, then the global economy would lose its main source of liquidity and growth would shrink. So during the gold standard, we were the reserve currency of the world, which we still are today, but all of our dollars were backed by a certain amount of gold. Other countries had to build up their dollar reserves. They did this by exporting. They produced stuff and they sold it to us. We bought it in dollars. They would build up their dollar reserves and they could use it in the global economy to buy other stuff and to sell other stuff. So you would have China selling something to Norway and the transactions would be settled in dollars. The problem that we had with that is in order to add liquidity, which is dollars, into the system, we had to run deficits. We had to be buying more than we were selling because that was the only way to get our money out there. The reason Nixon took us off the gold standard in 1971 was because there was fear that the dollar was starting to inflate within the domestic country, within the United States. So what you could have is very similar to a bank run. We've all studied that during the Great Depression. 2 people were running to the bank, telling why they were running to the bank. Next thing you know, you got a mass of people running to the bank trying to take their money out of the bank. But they can't because banks don't have boxes with your money in it stated this is John Doe's. When you deposit, you're basically loaning the money to the bank and they're loaning it back out. So you could have a bank run to the gold window where the multiple countries go to the gold window with excess dollars and say, we don't want these anymore, take your dollars, give us your gold. Then the United States runs out of gold, we go broke. So in 71, when Nixon removed us from the gold standards, there was roughly $60 billion in the global economy with only $10 billion in gold in Fort Knox backing it. Real problem. So Nixon severed us from the gold standard. Why does this matter today? This is a question I'll often get, is why does this matter today? We're no longer on the gold standard, but we're still the reserve currency of the world. The reason it matters today is because it still holds true. 60% now of transactions are all settled within the global economy, within the dollar. The world still depends upon us getting the dollar out there to add liquidity to the system. So countries do not just use the dollar today to purchase stuff. It's not uncommon for countries to loan each other dollar-denominated loans. Country A wants to build up its infrastructure in something, say wind towers. They don't have the dollars to hire the contractors and buy the steel and all the raw materials they need to do it. So they'll go to country B and ask for an $8 billion loan for it. B has excess dollar reserves, so they'll loan that money to A to do it. The loan has to be paid back in dollars. It doesn't involve the U.S. banks. It doesn't involve the U.S. government. Think of it as your brother-in-law comes over one day and he needs a $100 loan to get him through payday. You have an extra $100 in your wallet. You reach into your wallet and you give it to him at 10% interest. So it does not involve the banks. No banks got involved with that. No government got involved with that. You just happen to have an extra $100. He needed it. You guys reached an agreement. So with all this going on, it's still pretty obvious that the dollar is still considered the safest, most liquid asset in the world. If the United States now in turn decides to tariff all these nations and cut back on its deficit spending, so we're going to start trying to export more than we import, the outflows of dollar in the world economy will drain liquidity. That will also weigh down growth. This will starve the world of the dollar and could cause a problem with debt repayments, which could cause some type of a financial crisis. So you need to understand that the U.S. dollar can only be created by the United States Treasury. For foreign countries to build up their reserve currencies to pay back dollar-denominated debt, the only way they can do it is through exporting, which is selling stuff to the United States. If they're unable to do that, they're not going to be able to repay their debts. So if we as a country do blanket tariffs, 25% on everything coming in, we're going to cut the world off of the dollar. This is going to increase demand for dollars. This is basic supply and demand. We cut back on importing, therefore we're not buying from other countries in dollars. This begins reducing the amount of dollars available in the global economy because exporting is the only way for these foreign countries to get the dollar. What happens when something is scarce but in high demand? It goes up in value. So if we do this, the dollar is only going to get stronger. A stronger dollar is not ideal for exporting because it's going to take more of a foreign country's money to buy our products. And a strong dollar is ideal for importing because it'll take less of our dollars to buy the foreign product, which then we could sell it here cheaper. Therefore, I don't know how tariffs are going to help our domestic manufacturing. I don't believe it will. It will help some industries, but it's not likely to help everybody. Not only is it going to cut the world off of the dollar and cause a liquidity crisis, it could very well freeze up the global economy, cause layoffs, and possibly a global recession. This is what Triffin's dilemma referred to. The country who is the reserve currency of the world needs to get its money into the global economy to promote growth. However, this can lead to inflation and trade deficits at home. It's still a problem today. Our economies are intertwined with the rest of the world, whether we like it or not. They sell us stuff, we buy it in dollars. They get their dollars and they go out and they spend it. What do they also do with their dollars? They buy our debt, our U.S. treasuries, the 10-year yield. So people want to sit there and say the United States is doomed, buy gold, buy silver, buy Bitcoin, and you should have all of that in your portfolio to a certain extent. However, this is what I mean by cutting through the noise. When you hear things like that, to me, they're just scare tactics. People want to say things, and it's partially true. No country in the history of the world has been as in debt as the United States is. That's a fact. What don't they say? No debtor nation in the history of the world has had the privilege to borrow money in their own currency. That's what we do. We get our dollar out there, and countries loan it to other countries. They use it to do transactions in the global economy, and they use it to buy our debt. They loan it back to us in the form of U.S. treasuries. We take our dollar back and use it to build roads and things like that. In the meantime, we pay them back with dollars. They take the dollars and they loan it right back to us. Now, this can't continue forever. Jerome Powell has said this. He's let off the warning to Congress that they're spending too much and that we need to cut back. And you're seeing Trump talk about that and try to do that. But I'm just not sure that tariffs are going to be the answer, because we're going to cause a liquidity crisis in the global economy. So these are all stuff that you need to start processing. Triffin's dilemma is big. I talk about it a lot, so if you like what you heard, hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. I'll move on here at some point and talk about other economic forces such as the Cantillon effect and explain how that has damaged the manufacturing of the United States and how it basically makes it impossible for manufacturing to come back in mass droves to the United States, regardless of how we tariff. Working man investor, you guys let me know what you think. Thanks.